Hey everyone, today we are in far upstate New York and there's some pretty good fall foliage already. Today is the 25th of September 2023. Looks really good around here. My area hasn't really started changing yet, despite being about the same elevation. Maybe it's been colder here. 70 degrees out right now at the moment. The trees are not at peak yet. Most of them aren't. Some of them are. I'm seeing some pretty bright oranges. So I'll let the camera go for a little while. There's some pretty trees out here. Nothing up here but small farms, small towns in upstate New York. I always drive through here anytime I leave New England. It sure beats driving through the cities of Connecticut, New Jersey, and the lower part of New York. Come right through here into Pennsylvania. All rural roads, you never hit traffic, never really have to stop for anything. Just a bunch of emptiness. Wow, the hill to the left is so beautiful. Better to me in person than the little screen next to me, but I know when I get home and look at it on a bigger screen or in a darker room, it always looks nice. Starting to get some beautiful color looking down here into this valley. I actually went through some areas today that were past peak. All the trees have already lost their leaves. Those were a different type. A lot of that was aspen trees, which lose their leaves very early after turning yellow. For some reason, most of my aspen trees at home lost their leaves over a month ago. They didn't turn yellow this year. They just turned brown and fell off. Like they had fungus or something on them. It did rain a lot. Maybe that's what it was. Trees to the right. Those are already bald, whatever they are. Weeping willows, it looks like. They're not exactly bald, they just turn brown. It looks, yeah. Maples are almost in full peak. The ones that are healthy are still green. The ones that you see are very bright over there are doing okay. The ones that are already leafless are usually the weaker trees. Should be a very, very pretty year for fall foliage because of all the rain. The trees are doing better, healthier, so they keep the color for longer. very colorful by now. Last year we'd have to wait until the middle or end of, no, that was 2 years ago. I wasn't around last year for the fall colors. Maybe we'll take a trip to the northern part of Maine sometime in the next couple weeks, see how it's doing with color. I haven't been up in that part of the state for a while. Tropical storm, but when I got there it was very underperforming from what they said it would be, and that's part of the reason we don't make videos of storm drains anymore. It's so hard to actually find them. I drove, by the time I get home, 1,700 miles at least over the past 4 days for that storm. Didn't find a single thing. So that's why we don't even look for storm drains anymore. They used to be so abundant. All it would have to do is be a normal rainy day, not even a downpour. But ever since they started doing more maintenance in Massachusetts, can't find them. I even now travel 5-6 states away, still can't find a single thing because everyone else has always taken care of their drains perfectly. Mass was just an exception, so now that's why it's so hard to find things. Next time we go out on a longer trip, it'll be mostly to look for exploring and abandoned structures like we did last year on the western trip. I also realize outside of my area, beavers don't seem to be very abundant anywhere else that I've found. Look at all the birds. We just scared away that flock that was already on the ground. Now this hill coming up looks really pretty. Can you see all that orange up there in the distance? Really pretty. And look at the clouds, the shadows they're leaving behind. These hills up here look really pretty. Hopefully we drive through that. Suddenly we're getting a lot of insects on the windshield. It doesn't look very pretty where the sun's not touching. I've seen a lot of willow trees around here. They're just turning brown. Like, look at this big green tree. There's a very healthy maple. Hasn't even started yet. Train tracks that don't look like they've ran in so many years. To the left, it just goes right into the woods. To the right, there's a bunch of tank cars, but don't know if that's the end of the line or if they've just been sitting there. Got some good fall colors around in here. road seems a little bit out of the way, like a side road. Or maybe they just paved it and it doesn't have the line on it yet. These trees are becoming past peak. All the leaves all over the ground. I feel like the trees that aren't the healthiest, they often look prettier. It does look like that we're coming up here into these hills that I was pointing out. I just went the wrong way, the GPS is showing, but it's okay. We just added like 2 miles to the route. It's gonna put me back on the road next to us. So we'll be heading in the other direction in a minute. This looks pretty, these trees through this. What you're seeing is not maple. All these yellow ones. That one was. All the trees, they all look really healthy from all the rain. Hopefully next year's rainy, but maybe not this rainy. This year, there's been a lot of fungus and other things growing on trees because it's a little overwatered. Now we're going to turn away from the sun. Got to go back a little bit. I made a wrong turn right there. Looks like an abandoned road in front of us. Doesn't go anywhere. Looking at the map because sometimes it goes somewhere cool. It won't let me do anything with the map unless the camera shuts off. Earlier today we drove by a pretty cool prison a couple hours back, and it looked like it had been abandoned maybe as little as 5 years depending on how they were taking care of it before, but maybe even up to 20 years because I don't know, maybe they were maintaining it even after it was abandoned. But I was driving by a prison. I didn't think it was abandoned or anything. I just saw razor wire fence and there was this plastic sheathing over the fence, you know, like a construction site has, so you can't see in there. I assumed it was so you couldn't look in there at the prisoners, but as soon as I got up to the buildings I noticed vines climbing up them. Once we got to the end of the sheathing and you could see in the fence it was all overgrown in there, and we drove around a little bit of an area of it. There was a gate open, so you could drive between 2 of the razor wire fences, but there was no way you'd ever get in there. That place was so secured. It was made to keep people in, so there was no way we were getting in there unless the razor wire and stuff was to be cut. Like if you had bolt cutters, that'd be pretty easy to do, but that place there, I'm going to try to research what exactly it's called, because in the past I've seen smaller exploring channels get permission to go in there or into abandoned buildings, so never hurts to just ask. It would be cool to even just walk around the yard, not even in the buildings. But that place, just because of what it's called, to me it seems like it may have started its life as a school, but then later on more cell blocks and things were added onto it, because parts of it look fairly modern when I say that, maybe 50 years old, but parts of it, the architecture is just too beautiful. It's probably over 100 years old, with slate roofs like the offices of the prison. It looked too nice. But all the razor wire must be made out of stainless steel. It all looks super shiny, and it had 3 different fences going around the whole building. One of them had 6 layers of razor wire over it. So that would be very hard to just walk into. And that's probably why that building out in the absolute middle of nowhere didn't have a speck of graffiti on it. But as we were driving around between the fences, I noticed a couple of trucks that I could tell were not abandoned. So somebody was in there, even though the buildings obviously aren't being used. So that's when I decided to turn around. Because I don't know if we would have gotten into trouble if I kept driving around its perimeter. And by the looks of it, I couldn't even drive around its perimeter. I doubt that area between the fence went around all in one go. But it had really cool guard towers all over the place. Not a single broken window. I love finding abandoned buildings like that. Only natural decay. And that place didn't even start decaying because they were all brick buildings. And the windows, if you think about it, abandoned buildings, why would the windows break? That thing stood for over 100 years without the windows ever breaking. The thing that happens is people throw rocks through them. Now you got all the elements in the building, which makes all the paint and stuff fall off the walls. It accelerates it a ton. Like, one time I went in this abandoned building, which was in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. It's since been torn down, but I have videos of it. It was 4 levels of hoarder stuff. First floor, second floor, attic, and basement, completely packed with stuff. You could barely walk in there. The paint was peeling off every ceiling and every wall except the bathroom. Because bathrooms, you usually use paint that is mildew resistant, moisture resistant. So it's not necessarily hot and cold, which makes buildings fall apart. It does help, yes. But because that bathroom had proper paint, the humidity, which is the biggest factor, going humid, dry, that could not affect the bathroom because it was painted properly. That was a pretty cool building. It still had its electricity on. We were able to turn lights on. The basement had its light on when I entered it, so we left it on. People were asking me in my video, why does it still have power if it was likely abandoned for 20 years? Simple answer is, it's not worth the electric company's time sending somebody out there to disconnect the building. Because if the building's only using like $5 of power a month, they don't really care. It's not worth it to them to go out there and shut it off or even enforce it. When I bought my abandoned house 3 years ago, it had the power on, but it was abandoned for years. It still had the power on, but yet it was consuming power for years. The power wasn't off or anything. If the power was off, that building would have been even in worse condition, because if the power was off, things like the sump pumps wouldn't have been running and it would have been flooded. It probably would have been a total loss going a couple years with a flooded basement. But that building, which I got from auction.com, once I started working on it, even though I didn't own the building yet, the bank told me that I bought it from. Well, you have 60 days to back out of the auction, but you can start working on it now. You're just going to clean the house for us, even if you decide to back out of it. So I started working on it without owning it. Then one day, a couple weeks later, there was a thing taped to the door from the electric company saying, if you don't pay your outstanding due, which was a couple $100 from the power running them minimal things over the years, they never had the reason to come out to shut the power off, because they didn't care if it was using a couple dollars a month. It wasn't worth their time. But as soon as I started using power tools and fixing things, turning lights on overnight, they noticed a sudden spike in their computer system. And then they notice this bill hasn't been paid in years, so they sent someone out to put a letter on the house that said, we will shut your power off in 30 days if you don't pay for this. So I called them and explained, I still don't own the building, but can I pay for it? And when I told them that, they just waived every former bill. Didn't have to pay for it at all. They just waived everything. And then they allowed me to pay for it just as a one-time payment until it was in my name. So that worked out. People ask me that all the time. How do buildings still have power? Obviously somebody must be paying it. No, nobody's paying it. The power company just doesn't care. It's not worth their time sending somebody out for a building that's using a couple dollars a month. Season, the corn looks a lot better than it did a couple hours down south. It's just because they planted it later.